Breastfeeding for me was one of the hardest things that I have ever done. What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video I'm going to be sharing my breastfeeding journey. To start things off, before giving birth I was 100% planning to breastfeed. I went to a breastfeeding class. I learned a ton during that class and I thought I was gonna be perfect. I thought I was gonna be so good. I knew exactly what to expect, what I was gonna be doing, and that was not the case. So after Paisley was born, we did skin to skin and then we were able to breastfeed like within an hour of her being born. She latched right away. She did great and we honestly didn't have very many problems right when she was born. I did go see a lactation consultant like a week after she was born and she was able to help me so much. She was able to help figure out different like positions to feed her. She helped me figure out what it looks like with a good latch, and we were just able to like really figure out like how to breastfeed. But even though I knew what I was doing, after about 2.5 months things just went south. Paisley went on a nursing strike, and those are legit. A nursing strike is a period of time when a baby who has been nursing well suddenly refuses to breastfeed. They usually don't start until about 3 months. Nursing strikes can last from 1 to 2 days or as many as 9 to 10 days. So I looked that up and I saw, oh, she's on a nursing strike. Let's just wait it out, see what happens. And let me tell you, it was so hard to feed this girl when she was going through this. I would try to get her to latch and she just didn't want it. She'd arch her back, she'd pull her head away, and it was impossible to get her to latch. And so I was like, I just need to like stick with it and like get her there, you know? And I would try for 20 to 30 minutes to get her to nurse, and then after that she would be so upset and so angry that I would end up having to give her like a bottle of either like pumped milk or formula, and that was a big struggle for me. And that's what all of our nursing sessions looked like. It was me trying for 30 minutes and then like giving up. But I feel like at that point it's not giving up, it's like knowing that like she's so hungry and she's not eating, and so it's like it's time to give her, you know, food so she's not angry anymore. So I would do this every single nursing session, every single day. The only time that I could get her to actually breastfeed was at night, like in the middle of the night or right before bed. That was the only time I could ever get her to latch. So I was super frustrated. I would call my mom crying a lot and I was just like so beat up. This was like going on where it'd take so long just to try to get her to latch, and I would try all the tricks trying to get her to latch and nothing helped at all. And so I, you know, after the 30 minutes, give her a bottle. Sometimes I'd like try to get her to go back to the breast, and half the time she would, half the time she wouldn't. And it was like really frustrating because I wanted to breastfeed, and so if I gave her like any sort of bottle, milk, whatever, I had to pump afterwards because I was like, gotta tell my body that it needs to produce more because my baby ate more than it came from it. And so I was trying to nurse 30 minutes, giving her a bottle, and then I was pumping. Okay, that doesn't work for anybody's sanity, let me tell you. That's like, no, like it was really bad. And so I looked it up and I was like, let's wait like 2 weeks, see what happens, see if there's any changes, and nothing changed. And I was like, well, maybe she's just like, I don't know, a special baby who needs longer. So I was like, you know, I'll do it for 2 more weeks. So I did this for 4 weeks where I was trying to get her to nurse. She wouldn't. And that would last 30 minutes. I'd have to give her a bottle and then I'd have to pump. And a month of that is not fun, let me tell you. At that point, I started making like pros and cons list. I ended up making 4 different ones, and I made one for like exclusively breastfeeding, exclusively pumping. I made one for like only formula. And then I made one for like combo feeding, so like breast milk and formula. Have them right here. I made these pros and cons list. And this is when she was about 3.5 months, when I was so over breastfeeding. It was horrible. So yeah, I made these two. So I put like a ton of work into making these pros and cons lists, trying to figure out like what was making me the most happy, what was making Paisley the most happy. I think it's funny that I made this like breastfeeding only pros and cons list, because that wasn't working at all, and it was like impossible to like make her just be breastfed. So I was like, I don't know why I'm making this. But I always wonder if I would have gone to like a lactation consultant during that time to see if things could have gotten better. But I was realizing that breastfeeding was not making me happy at all. This top one is for breastfeeding only, and you can see like the pros and cons list. Like the cons are very large, and the pros, like I realized that like I hated feeding in public. I hated pumping with like a passion when she wasn't getting enough from me, and I also hated not knowing how much she was getting. That was driving me insane. I felt like breastfeeding, I did not have my body to myself, and I also felt that way during pregnancy. And so it was like 9 months of pregnancy with who knows how long with breastfeeding, and so it was like I just like don't have my own body to myself, and that was really hard. And then I really thought about like pumping only, but I just hate pumping. I think if I would have had like the ones that you can wear and you're not plugged into a wall, that would have been a lot easier. But I also just hated cleaning the parts, and then when I was doing a lot of pumping, I wasn't producing as much as she was eating each day, and so I was constantly trying to like figure out how to get my supply up, and I really couldn't figure out how to do that. And so I just like was like, well, I'm not producing enough just to pump, and so either way I'd have to like combo feed if I wanted to do like pumping. And so I made my combo feeding pros and cons list, and I honestly just didn't like that, because it was like I'm gonna have to be washing like pump parts and bottles, and like that's like the worst thing, because back when I was feeding her, trying to nurse, giving her a bottle, and then pumping, that's all I was doing all day long, and it was like just a cycle. That's all I did the entire day. And then I'd have to wash them. And so it's like if I wasn't trying to feed Paisley, I was washing all of her stuff to feed Paisley. It just wasn't working. Formula only pros and cons list. This is the pros and this is the cons. So yeah, after making that list, I was like, shoot, like formula is like what's gonna be best for us. And it was incredibly hard to come to that conclusion and like realize that was what was best. Like I said, I was looking at like my happiness and her happiness. She was happy with bottles, and so whatever I picked, I had to do bottles. And so that is what we did. But the mom guilt was so high, and that was so hard for me to go through. Back to these pros and cons list. Like on all of my cons, I express like my emotions, because that's what you do, right? A big con for breastfeeding only, I felt so isolated when I was breastfeeding. I felt like I had to go in like another room and hide, and like sometimes that's nice to like get away for a while, but I also felt like I was missing out on like everything all the time, and that was so frustrating for me. One of my cons for pumping only was that I was always mentally and physically exhausted. And you mamas who pump know exactly what I'm talking about. Like it is so like just like mentally draining for some reason, and you're constantly worried about like your supply. It really is interesting how the world and people and especially people like in your family who are constantly telling you that like you need to breastfeed, you need, like, breastfeeding is best. Like, I got that a lot, just from different people, from social media, from, you know, grandparents, from just like distant people. Having so many people telling you that like you need to breastfeed made switching to formula so hard. And so like most of my cons on the formula list literally are just like my emotions. Like, I feel guilty, I feel judged. I felt guilty that I wasn't giving my baby what was best. I felt judged because everyone was gonna know that I wasn't breastfeeding. I felt embarrassed and like a failure because, like, I felt like a lot of people were just gonna be like, you just need to keep trying, you just need to keep doing it, and like eventually you'll get there. And it's like, you don't know that entire month that I was trying to nurse, giving her a bottle, and then pumping afterwards. So that was like my biggest struggle with switching to formula, was just like all of the emotions and all the attacks that I put on myself, when really I shouldn't have done that, because bottles are what make my baby happy. And formula allowed anyone to feed her. It allowed me to have a babysitter and just be like, here's the formula. Like, I didn't have to worry about pumping. I didn't have to worry about keeping my supply up. I knew exactly how much milk she was getting every single day, all the time. Formula, you can feed it wherever you are. People make it seem like breastfeeding is so easy because it's like you just whip it out, right? But formula is literally the same way. Like, water is available anywhere you go. Where I am now, it seems so silly that I was so worried about this. When Paisley was 3.5 months, when we were switching to formula, it was 2 weeks before Christmas, and we were going to be around so much family, and they were all going to know that I was done breastfeeding. And I was so scared to go like home for Christmas because I didn't want anyone like asking me about it. I didn't want anyone judging me. I didn't want to feel like I was a failure. The timing of switching was horrible, but it was something that had to be done for like the happiness of our family. But what's really frustrating for me is that I had quite a few family members just assume that I was breastfeeding, and I had a few family members who would comment on, you know, Paisley getting bottles rather than me taking her to the back of the room by myself to breastfeed her. It's like, for some reason, was like a big deal to everybody that she was getting bottles, and it was just like really frustrating when people would just assume that I was breastfeeding. Don't assume people are breastfeeding. It seems like really silly for me now to like remember all these like emotions, but they were real and it was hard. I feel like for me, I didn't give up on breastfeeding. I felt like I just knew when it was time to stop, and it wasn't giving up. It was realizing that this isn't working. So I completely stopped breastfeeding her when she was 3.5 months, but I slowly weaned myself, my body, from producing milk, and so I pumped for another month, but I just started dropping feedings and dropping pumping sessions until I was only pumping like 3 times a day, and then 2 times a day, and then 1 time a day, and then I would only pump if I needed relief. And so that is how I stopped breastfeeding. But she was still getting breast milk until she was 4.5 months. We would just mix it with formula, and then after that, and I dried up, and then she was just on formula. That's my breastfeeding journey. I feel like I know a lot more for the next baby, but I also feel like I'm more prepared, like, if I need to do formula again. Like, I feel like I can definitely do that without, like, having all my crazy emotions that I had this time. But we'll see. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And I post videos every Wednesday, so...